You're dragging us down. The words hit me like ice water on a Tuesday morning that had started like any other. I sat in the sterile conference room at Dawson Hayes Manufacturing Solutions, staring across the polished oak table at my Uncle Rick, the CEO. His weathered face wore an expression I'd seen him use with difficult suppliers: cold, dismissive, final. To his left sat my father, Thomas Hayes, VP of Operations, studying his coffee cup like it held the secrets of the universe. "Excuse me?" I managed, though part of me had seen this coming. 8 years of watching my cousin Blake take credit for my hits. 8 years of being passed over while he got promoted. 8 years of biting my tongue during family dinners where they praised his natural sales instincts. Uncle Rick leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his ball. "Your numbers are weak, Jordan. Blake's closing deals, your administrative support at best." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the conference table where I'd presented dozens of successful client proposals, where I'd saved the Castellano account 3 years ago, where I'd negotiated the Henderson renewal that brought in $2.4 million last quarter. Administrative support. "Blake hasn't closed a deal in 2 years, I said, keeping my voice level. "I closed them. I manage 70% of our client relationships. I personally handle..." That's not what the report said. Rick's interruption was sharp, practiced. He'd rehearsed this conversation. "Blake brought in Castellano Industries. Blake secured the Henderson contract. Blake's been carrying this company's sales division while you've been shuffling paperwork." I felt something cold settle in my chest, spreading outward like spilled water. Of course. The same reports where my name got systematically replaced with Blake's before they reached Rick's desk. The same reports where my client meetings became Blake's strategic partnerships, and my crisis management became Blake's innovative solutions. I looked at my father, searching his face for any sign of protest, any indication that he might speak up for his own son. Dad's eyes remained fixed on his coffee, jaw tight, shoulders hunched like a man trying to disappear into his suit jacket. The silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant hum of the office printer and the tick of the wall clock marking each second of his cowardice. "Look," Rick continued, his tone softening into what he probably thought was paternal concern. "This isn't personal, Jordan. You're family. But business is business, and we can't carry dead weight anymore. The market's too competitive." Dead weight. 8 years of 60-hour weeks. 8 years of emergency calls at midnight when equipment failed and clients panicked. 8 years of building relationships, solving problems, growing accounts that Blake would later claim as his victories in company meetings while I sat in the back row, invisible. "Blake's ready to take full responsibility for the client portfolio," Rick was saying. "He's got the MBA, the vision, the drive. What we need going forward. The MBA from state that Daddy paid for while Blake partied through business school. The vision that consisted of showing up at 10 a.m. and leaving by 3 p.m. for client development that usually involved golf courses and expensive lunches. The drive that had produced exactly 0 new accounts in the past 24 months. I thought about yesterday's call with Robert Castellano, CEO of our biggest client. "Jordan," he'd said, "I need you to know something. Your work during that equipment crisis 3 years ago saved us $2 million. Victoria still talks about how you stayed on site for 72 hours straight, sleeping in our break room, until we were back online. That's the kind of partnership we value. $4.8 million annually. 40% of our company's revenue." Robert Castellano had never asked for Blake in a meeting, had never requested Blake's input on equipment specifications, had never called Blake's direct line when problems arose. But somehow, according to Rick's reports, Blake had secured that relationship. "Clean out your desk," Rick said, standing up. "We're letting you go. Today." The finality of it should have shocked me, but instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Like a weight I'd been carrying for years had suddenly lifted. No more watching Blake stumble through presentations I'd prepared. No more having my salary frozen at $78,000 while Blake pulled down 125 plus bonuses for work he'd never done. No more family dinners where they toasted his success while I passed the potatoes in silence. I stood up slowly, deliberately. Rick was watching me, probably expecting anger, tears, pleading. Dad was still studying his coffee like a man reading his own obituary. Understood, I said simply. Rick blinked, clearly thrown by my calm response. That's good. Professional. I appreciate that, Jordan. Really. I walked toward the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. One question, Rick. When Castellano calls next week for their quarterly review, who's going to explain the new equipment specifications they requested? The ones I spent 3 weeks researching? Rick's confident expression flickered for just a moment. Blake will handle it. He's been involved in all those discussions. Right, I said. Of course he has. The walk to my desk felt surreal, like moving through water. The office buzzed with its usual Tuesday morning energy. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the coffee machine gurgling in the break room. 45 employees going about their routines, unaware that the person who generated $8.4 million in revenue last year was packing his belongings into a cardboard box. Kevin Nash, our operations manager, appeared at my cubicle as I was emptying my desk drawers. His round face was flushed with the kind of anger I couldn't afford to show. "This is bullshit," he said, not bothering to lower his voice. "You know that, right?" I nodded, carefully placing my industry certifications in the box. 8 years of continuing education credits, professional development courses, client relationship seminars, all on my own time, my own dime, because the company's training budget always seemed to go toward Blake's conference trips to Vegas and Miami. I mean, complete bullshit, Kevin continued. Everyone in this office knows who does the real work. Everyone knows Blake couldn't close a deal if his life depended on it. I picked up my coffee mug, the one Mom had given me when I started here, printed with the world's best son, and wrapped it in tissue paper. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You gonna fight this?" Kevin asked. "No," I said, surprised by how certain I sounded. "Why not? You've got documentation, client testimonials. Hell, you've got the Henderson renewal email where the client specifically thanked you by name." I paused in my packing, considering. I could fight it. I could march into Rick's office with printouts of every client email, every thank you, every contract with my signature on it. I could demand that Dad grow a spine and tell the truth about who really managed what accounts. I could make this ugly and public and satisfying in all the wrong ways. Instead, I smiled. Actually smiled. "I'm gonna let them figure it out." Kevin frowned. "Figure what out?" "How to keep Castellano without me." The words felt good coming out. Clean, simple, true. I sealed the box with packing tape, the sound sharp and final in the quiet office space. Around us, people were pretending not to watch, but I could feel their eyes, sense their discomfort. Everyone knew this was wrong. Everyone knew Blake was incompetent. Everyone knew the company was making a catastrophic mistake. But everyone also knew that speaking up meant risking their own jobs, their own steady paychecks, their own fragile positions in the Dawson-Hayes ecosystem. I didn't blame them. I understood survival instincts. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick text to Robert Castellano. "No longer with Dawson-Hayes as of today. Wanted you to hear it from me first." His response came back within minutes. "What happened? Call me." I showed the screen to Kevin, who let out a low whistle. "He's not going to be happy about working with Blake," Kevin said. "No," I agreed. "He's not." I picked up my box, heavier now with the weight of 8 years' worth of accumulated work life, and walked toward the exit. Past the conference room where Rick was probably already planning how to spin this to the rest of the staff. Past Dad's office, door closed, blinds drawn. Past the reception desk where Sandra had worked for 15 years and knew exactly who brought in which clients. "Jordan," she called softly as I passed. "I'm sorry." I stopped, turned back. Sandra's eyes were bright with unshed tears, her weathered hands gripping the edge of her desk. "Thank you," I said. "For everything." She nodded, unable to speak. The parking garage was cool and dim, filled with the echo of my footsteps on concrete. I loaded my box into the back of my Honda Civic, the same car I'd been driving for 6 years because raises were tight, while Blake got his BMW company car and sat for a moment in the driver's seat. My phone buzzed. A text from Blake. "Heard the news. Sorry, man. You'll land on your feet." I stared at the message, wondering if he actually believed his own performance, or if some part of him knew exactly what he'd been doing all these years. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. I deleted the text without responding and pulled out of the garage into the bright September morning, leaving Dawson Hayes Manufacturing Solutions in my rearview mirror for the last time. The phone rang at exactly 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know because I was staring at my laptop screen in my new home office, watching the cursor blink in an empty email draft while sipping coffee that actually tasted good for once. No more office swill. No more pretending Blake's morning recap of his weekend golf game was fascinating. Dawson Hayes Manufacturing, this is Jenny. I could hear it through the thin walls of my apartment. My neighbor Mrs. Chen was hard of hearing, so her TV volume leaked through everything. But this wasn't her usual show. This was a phone conversation, and the voice sounded panicked. He's not here anymore. Jenny's voice carried that particular strain of someone delivering bad news they didn't fully understand. Jordan Hayes left the company 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks? Had it really been that long? The days had blurred together in a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. No more 6 a.m. emails from Rick. No more watching Blake stumble through client presentations I prepared for him. No more sitting in meetings where my 8 years of relationship building got credited to someone who couldn't remember which end of a wrench was which. Well, who's handling the Morrison account now? The voice on Mrs. Chen's TV was getting louder, more frustrating. Morrison Manufacturing. I'd brought them on board 18 months ago after their previous supplier screwed up a major delivery. Spent 2 weeks personally overseeing their first order to make sure everything was perfect. Rick had announced it in the company newsletter as Blake's latest client acquisition success. That would be Blake Dawson, VP of Sales, Jenny said, and I could practically hear her reading from a script. Would you like me to transfer you? There was a pause. A long pause. The kind of pause that happens when someone's trying to figure out how to be polite while their world shifts underneath them. Blake Dawson? The kid who showed up to our site visit in khakis and loafers? Who asked if our hydraulic press was like a really big stapler? I nearly choked on my coffee. I remembered that site visit. Blake had insisted on coming along because Rick wanted him to have more client FaceTime. I'd spent the entire drive explaining their operation, their pain points, their technical specifications. Blake had nodded and said, "Got it," about 40 times. Then he'd asked the stapler question in front of their entire engineering team. I can take a message? Jenny sounded like she was drowning. The message is that Morrison Manufacturing is reviewing all our vendor relationships, and you can tell Blake Dawson that we'll be in touch. The line went dead. Even through the wall, I could feel the weight of that silence. My phone buzzed. A text from Kevin, my former office mate who'd witnessed 8 years of this circus. Morrison just called looking for you. Blake took the call. It did not go well. Another buzz. This one from Marcus Webb. Coffee at 11? Have a proposition for you. I stared at both messages, feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Not satisfaction exactly, but clarity. Like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each one perfectly positioned by years of Blake taking credit, Rick playing favorites, and Dad staying silent when it mattered. Marcus Webb's office occupied the top floor of a building that actually looked successful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that wasn't held together with duct tape and hope, and a coffee machine that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything Dawson Hayes pretended to be, but never quite achieved. Jordan Hayes, Marcus stood up as I walked in, extending a hand that felt like he actually meant the handshake. I've been wanting to have this conversation for about 3 years. 3 years? That's how long I've been watching you manage Castellano Industries from the outside. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. My company bids on their secondary contracts sometimes. Robert Castellano mentions you in every meeting. Jordan says this, Jordan recommends that. Jordan solved our crisis in 2021. Never Blake, never Rick, always Jordan. The crisis. I'd almost forgotten that Marcus would know about it. The entire industry had been watching when Castellano's main production line went down during their biggest order of the year. 72 hours of me practically living at their facility, coordinating with 3 different suppliers, sleeping on their break room couch, and personally overseeing the replacement installation. Rick took credit for that one too, I said. I know. I was at the industry dinner where he gave that speech about Dawson Hayes' innovative crisis management. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Funny thing is, Robert was sitting 3 tables over and he looked confused as hell. We both laughed, but there was an edge to it. The kind of laugh that happens when you realize how long you've been the punchline of someone else's joke. So here's my proposition, Marcus continued. I've got 43 clients, solid relationships, growing accounts, but I'm missing something. I'm missing the kind of account management that turns a vendor into a partner. The kind that makes clients call you personally when something goes wrong instead of shopping around for your replacement. He slid a folder across the desk. VP of Client Relations. $145,000 base, plus commission on retained accounts, plus equity after year 1. Your job would be simple. Do what you've been doing at Dawson Hayes, but get paid what you're actually worth. I opened the folder. The offer letter was already printed, dated today. Like he'd known I'd say yes before I'd even walked in. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his voice getting serious. Castellano's contract with Dawson Hayes is up for renewal in 8 weeks. Robert's been asking around about alternatives. Quietly, my heart stopped. 8 weeks. I'd been so focused on the immediate aftermath of getting fired that I'd lost track of the timeline. The Castellano renewal was the biggest event on Dawson Hayes' calendar every 3 years. Rick had been preparing for it since January, making sure Blake was ready to lead the negotiations. Blake, who couldn't remember their equipment specifications if his life depended on it? Who thought hydraulic presses were like staplers? I'm not asking you to poach them, Marcus said quickly. But if Robert Castellano calls looking for alternatives, and if he specifically asks to work with you again, well, that's just good business. I thought about the 67 missed calls that would come. The panic in Rick's voice when he realized what he'd done. Dad's uncomfortable silence turning into desperate phone calls. Blake's cocky confidence crumbling when faced with actual consequences. When do I start? The difference was immediate. Not just the salary or the office or the coffee machine at work. It was the way people talked to me. Like my opinion mattered. Like my 8 years of experience was actually worth something. Jordan, what do you think about the Hendricks proposal? Marcus asked during my first team meeting. At Dawson Hayes, Rick would have turned to Blake first, asked for his strategic input on accounts he'd never touched. I would have sat there, watching someone with half my experience and none of my client knowledge make decisions that I'd have to fix later. Hendricks is solid, but they're price sensitive, I said. If we can match their current vendor on the initial order and prove value through delivery speed, we'll have them for the long term. Their procurement guy, Dave Martinez, cares more about reliability than cost once you earn his trust. You know Dave Martinez? Sarah Kim, Webb's operations manager, looked impressed. Worked with him on a project 2 years ago. Good guy, hates surprises, loves detailed progress reports. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I could give him a call if you want. Feel out their timeline. The room went quiet. Not the bad kind of quiet, like when Blake said something stupid and everyone was trying not to laugh. The good kind of quiet. The kind that happens when people realize they've been missing a piece they didn't know they needed. Make the call, Marcus said. By the end of week 1, I'd connected with Dave Martinez, set up a preliminary meeting, and identified 3 other prospects from my network who were unhappy with their current suppliers. Not poaching, not stealing, just being available when people needed alternatives. My phone had been silent. No calls from Rick, no texts from Blake, no awkward conversations with Dad. It was like I'd never existed at Dawson Hayes. Like 8 years of relationship building and crisis management and late-night problem-solving had just evaporated. I should have been hurt. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. Kevin texted me on a Thursday. Blake missed the Morrison call, 3rd time this week. Jenny's starting to panic. Then, also Rick asked me where you keep your client files. I told him you never kept physical files for the big accounts. Everything's in your head. I smiled at him. It was true. After years of watching Blake rifle through my notes before client meetings, I'd stopped writing down the important stuff. Client preferences, personal details, technical specifications, relationship history, all of it lived in my memory, built through hundreds of conversations, site visits, and problem-solving sessions. Blake could have the files. The real relationships had walked out the door with me. My phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. Local area code. Jordan, this is Victoria Lim from Castellano Industries. My blood went cold. Victoria was Robert's COO, the person I'd worked with most closely over the past 6 years. Sharp, no nonsense, remembered everything. If she was calling me directly instead of going through Dawson Hayes. Hi, Victoria. How are you? Confused, actually. I tried calling your office yesterday about our quarterly review, and they told me you no longer work there. Since when? I took a breath. This was it. The moment when 8 years of relationship building would either pay off or disappear forever. Since 3 weeks ago, I'm at Webb Industries now. Webb Industries? Marcus Webb's company? That's right. There was a pause. I could hear keyboard clicking in the background, like she was taking notes. Can I ask what happened? You've been our primary contact for 6 years. This seems sudden. I chose my words carefully. It was a business decision on their part. They felt Blake Dawson was ready to handle the major accounts. Another pause. This time. Blake Dawson? Rick's son? That's right. The one who asked if our quality control process was like a really thorough inspection? I couldn't help but laugh. You remember that? Jordan, I remember everything, including the fact that you've solved every problem we've had for 6 years, and Blake has, well, he's attended some meetings. The keyboard clicking stopped. Our contract renewal is coming up, Victoria said slowly. 8 weeks from then, Blake's supposed to be handling the negotiations. I heard. And you're at Webb Industries now. I am. Does Webb Industries work with companies our size? This was it. The question that would change everything. I could practically see Rick's face when he found out. Blake's panic when he realized what was happening. Dad's guilty conscience finally catching up with him. We do, I said. We'd love the opportunity to discuss how we could support Castellano's needs. I think Robert would be very interested in that conversation. The cancellation email arrived at 4:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was in a client meeting when my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp trapped in a jar. Rick saw it first. His office overlooked the parking lot where I could see his silhouette through the blinds, probably scrolling through emails with his usual arrogance. Then the silhouette went rigid, completely still for about 10 seconds. Then it started pacing. My phone rang. Rick's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Still, Rick. Declined. Third call. Fourth. Fifth. Marcus Webb, my new boss, glanced at my phone during our strategy meeting. Popular guy today? Just my old company realizing their mistake, I said, turning the phone face down. But I could still feel it vibrating against the conference table like a tiny earthquake. The voicemail notification popped up after the 12th call. I almost smiled. Almost. Marcus raised an eyebrow. 12 calls? Must be important. It is, I said. To them. When the meeting ended, I walked to my new office. Actual office with a door and everything. Not the cramped cubicle Rick had stuck me in for 8 years. And finally checked the voicemail. Rick's voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. Jordan, call me back immediately. We have a situation with Castellano. Call me back. I deleted it and opened my email instead. There it was, forwarded from Robert Castellano to the entire Dawson Hayes leadership team. Professional, polite, devastating. Dear Rick and team, after careful consideration, Castellano Industries has decided not to renew our contract with Dawson Hayes Manufacturing Solutions. Our partnership ends with the current term on March 31st. We appreciate the service relationship over the past 6 years, particularly the exceptional account management we received. We wish you continued success. Moving forward, we will be partnering with Webb Industries for our manufacturing solutions needs. Best regards, Robert Castellano, CEO, Castellano Industries. $4.8 million. Gone. 40% of their annual revenue. Vanished with a polite email and a handshake I'd facilitated 2 weeks earlier. My phone started ringing again. This time it was Dad. I stared at his name on the screen. Thomas Hayes. The man who'd sat in that conference room 6 weeks ago and said nothing while his brother fired his own son. The man who'd let Rick take credit for my work for 8 years because it was easier than standing up to his older brother. I let it ring. The phone went quiet for exactly 90 seconds. Then it started again. Dad. I declined the call and opened my laptop to work on the Castellano transition proposal. Ironic, really. I was now getting paid to steal my old company's biggest client, and they were calling me for help. The calls kept coming. Rick, Dad, Rick again. A number I didn't recognize. Probably Blake, calling from someone else's phone since I'd blocked his number months ago. Rick, Dad, Rick. The pattern continued like a broken record, each call more desperate than the last. By 6 p.m., my phone showed 23 missed calls. 23. In less than 2 hours. I finally listened to Dad's voicemail. His voice was shaky, older somehow. Jordan, please. Your uncle he's not handling this well. Castellano was 40% of our revenue. We need to talk. Please call me back. Not handling it well. That was Rich. Rick wasn't handling losing the client I'd built from nothing, maintained for 6 years, and kept loyal through 3 major crises. The client he'd just assumed would stick around after firing the only person in the company they actually trusted. My desk phone rang. The receptionist's voice came through the intercom. Jordan, there's a Rick Dawson here to see you. Says he's your uncle. I looked out my office window. Sure enough, Rick's Mercedes was in the visitor parking, parked crooked across 2 spaces. Typical. Tell him I'm in a meeting, I said. He says it's urgent. Family emergency. Family emergency. The only emergency here was his realization that actions have consequences. Tell him I'm in a meeting that will run late. Very late. Through my window, I watched Rick pace in the lobby for 20 minutes before finally leaving. His shoulders were hunched, defeated. For 8 years, I'd never seen Rick look anything but completely confident. Arrogant, even. Seeing him reduced to begging felt satisfying. The calls didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. Wednesday brought 15 more calls. Thursday, 18. By Friday, my missed call log looked like a phone book. Rick had called 43 times. Dad, 28. Blake, 12. Even Aunt Melissa had called twice, probably at Rick's desperate request. I finally blocked Rick's number on Friday afternoon. The silence was immediate and blissful, but Dad kept calling. And unlike Rick, whose desperation felt like justice, Dad's calls made my chest tight with something I didn't want to examine too closely. Guilt, maybe. Or the last dying embers of the relationship we used to have. Saturday morning, he showed up at my apartment. I was making coffee when the knock came. 3 sharp raps, then a pause, then 3 more. Dad's knock. The same pattern he'd used when I was a kid and he'd come to wake me up for Little League. I opened the door. He looked terrible. Older than his 54 years with dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his usually clean-shaven face. His hair, always perfectly styled, was messy like he'd been running his hands through it. "Hi, son." "Dad." We stood there for a moment, him on my doorstep, me blocking the entrance. The morning air was cold, and I could see his breath when he spoke. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside and let him in. He looked around my apartment, the first time he'd been here since I'd moved in 8 months ago. His eyes lingered on the framed photo of me receiving my MBA, the one that had sat on my desk at Dawson Hayes until the day Rick fired me. "Nice place," he said. "Thanks." He sat heavily on my couch, suddenly looking every one of his 54 years. "Jordan, we need to discuss what happened with Castellano." "What about it?" "They're our biggest client. We're our biggest client. Losing them?" He ran a hand through his hair. "It could destroy the company." I poured myself coffee and didn't offer it. That sounds like a management problem. You could fix this. Robert Castellano respects you. If you talk to him. I did talk to him. That's how he ended up at Web Industries. Dad's face crumpled. Jordan, please. I know Rick made a mistake. A mistake? The coffee mug felt warm in my hands, grounding me. Dad, Rick didn't make a mistake. He made a choice. He chose Blake over me. He chose appearances over results. He chose to believe his own lies about who was actually running those accounts. He was trying to give Blake experience. By taking credit for my work, by paying me $78,000 while Blake made $125 for doing nothing, by firing me when I just closed $8.4 million in deals. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Outside, I could hear my neighbors starting their Saturday morning. Lawnmowers, kids playing, normal family sounds. The life I'd never really had. What do you want? Dad asked finally. To come back? We could make you a partner, give you equity, whatever you need. I don't want anything from you. Then why won't you help us? I set down my coffee mug and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who'd taught me to throw a baseball, who'd helped with my homework, who'd been so proud when I got my MBA. The same man who'd sat silent while his brother destroyed my career. Dad, do you remember what you said when I asked for a raise last year? He looked confused. Rick handles compensation. You said the budget was tight, remember? And then the next week, Blake got an $85,000 BMW. That was different. How? Rick felt Blake needed to project success to clients. While I drove my 8-year-old Honda to meetings with those same clients, the clients I was actually closing. Dad's voice got smaller. Jordan, do you remember the Industry Excellence Awards? When I was nominated for Account Manager of the Year? Yes. Rick wouldn't let me attend. Said someone needed to cover the office. Blake went instead. Posted pictures on Instagram while I answered phones. Dad was staring at his hands. Do you remember when Castellano had that equipment failure 3 years ago? When they were losing $50,000 a day? You fixed it. I worked 72 hours straight. Slept in my car in their parking lot. Solved a problem their own engineers couldn't figure out. Saved them $2 million in losses. I remember. And Rick sent a company-wide email giving Blake credit for his team's excellent work. Dad looked up. His eyes were wet. I should have said something. When? That day? Or any of the 100 other times Rick took credit for my work? Or maybe 6 weeks ago in that conference room when he fired me? I didn't agree with firing you, but you didn't stop him. Rick's the CEO, and you're the VP, and my father, and you said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Dad wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. How do I fix this? He whispered. You don't. Some things can't be fixed, Dad. They can only be lived with. The award felt heavier in my hands than I expected. Account Executive of the Year, engraved in silver on black marble. I stood at the podium, looking out at 200 faces in the hotel ballroom. Industry veterans, competitors, clients. And there, at table 12 in the back, sat Dad and Uncle Rick. They looked smaller somehow. Rick's face had that gray pallor of someone who hadn't slept well in months. Dad kept fidgeting with his napkin, avoiding eye contact. I hadn't seen them since Mom's birthday dinner 8 months ago, where the tension was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. This award, I began, my voice carrying across the silent room, is for everyone who's ever been told they're dragging the team down while doing the actual work. Keep going. The right people notice. I didn't look at their table once. Not once. But I could feel Dad's eyes burning into me from across the room. Rick had his head down, studying his untouched salmon like it held the secrets of the universe. The applause was thunderous. Marcus Webb, my boss, and the CEO who'd given me a second chance, stood up first. Then Robert Castellano rose from table 3, that genuine smile spreading across his weathered face. Victoria was beaming beside him, clapping so hard her jewelry rattled. As I walked off stage, trophy in hand, I caught a glimpse of Rick pushing back from his table. He was leaving me. Dad remained seated, staring at his plate like a man at his own funeral. 3 months later, the call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in my new corner office at Webb Industries. Windows on two sides, view of the harbor, my own parking spot with Senior VP painted on the asphalt. The phone showed Dad on the caller ID. I'd been ignoring his calls for 14 months, but something made me answer this time. Hi. His voice was smaller than I remembered. Hi, Dad. Saw your promotion announcement in the trade magazine. Senior Vice President. Congratulations. Thanks. I kept my tone neutral, professional, like I was talking to any other industry contact. Rick's stepping down, he said after a long pause. Health issues. Doctor says it's stress-related. High blood pressure, anxiety attacks. He had to take a second mortgage on the house last month. I spun my chair to face the harbor. A ferry was cutting through the gray water, its wake spreading behind it like consequences. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? The question hung in the air between us. I considered it honestly. I'm sorry he's sick. Not sorry he's stepping down. Fair. Dad's laugh was hollow, defeated. Listen, I wanted to ask, would you ever consider... No. You didn't let me finish. You were going to ask if I'd come back, save the company. The answer is no. I watched another ferry approach the dock, passengers gathering at the rails, ready to disembark and move on with their lives. Not even for family? The word family hit me like a physical thing. I closed my eyes, remembering that conference 14 months ago. Rick's voice. You're dragging us down. Dad's silence. The sound of my career being flushed down the drain while my father sat there like a statue. Family fired me, I said, my voice steady as granite. Family took credit for my work for 8 years. Family called me 67 times only when they needed something. That's not family, Dad. That's business. And business-wise, I made the right choice. I could hear him breathing on the other end, that labored sound of someone carrying a weight too heavy for their shoulders. The company was hemorrhaging money. 23 employees left now, down from 45. They'd moved to a strip mall office between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Blake had quit 6 months ago when Rick finally made him do actual work. He was selling real estate now, posting motivational quotes on LinkedIn about finding your passion. The Castellano contract alone was keeping us afloat, Dad said quietly. When they left, we lost our biggest client. Then Morrison Industries followed you. Then Apex Manufacturing. It was like dominoes falling. Turns out clients knew the difference between me and Blake, I said. Through my window, I could see the Webb Industries sign being installed on the new building we just purchased downtown. Business was good. Really good. I understand why you can't forgive us, Dad continued. But I wanted you to know, I'm proud of you. Even if I never said it when it mattered. That hit different. For a second, I was 8 years old again, bringing home a report card full of A's, desperate for his approval. For a second, I wanted to say thank you and mean it. But I wasn't 8 anymore. I don't need you to be proud now, I told him. I needed it then. When I was closing $8.4 million in deals and getting paid $78,000. When I was working 60-hour weeks while Blake showed up at 10 and left at 3. When Robert Castellano was sending thank you letters addressed specifically to me, and Rick was forwarding them company-wide giving Blake credit. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. I could hear the regret in his breathing, the weight of all those moments he'd chosen Rick's approval over his son's dignity. I know, he whispered finally. I know I failed you. Every time I stayed quiet. Every time I let Rick take credit away from you. Every time I chose the easy path instead of the right one. I know. Knowing doesn't change anything, I said. The harbor was getting busy now. Lunch hour, people moving with purpose, living their lives, making their choices. You can't retroactively care about someone, Dad. You can't retroactively stand up for them. So there's nothing? No way back? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Could I work with him again? Trust him again? Sit in meetings and pretend the last 8 years didn't happen? Maybe we can have coffee sometime, I said finally. Talk about Mom, the weather, how the Mariners are doing. But business, the company? That ship sailed when you sat silent in that conference room. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. watching the ferries come and go. My assistant knocked and reminded me about the 3 o'clock meeting with potential new clients, a manufacturing company looking to switch from Dawson Hayes because they'd heard about our exceptional account management. That evening, I drove past the old office building where I'd spent 8 years of my life. There was a "for lease" sign in the window now. The Dawson Hayes logo had been removed, leaving a pale rectangle on the brick where it used to hang. A ghost of better days. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert Castellano. "Dinner next week? Victoria wants to discuss expanding our contract. You've exceeded every expectation." I smiled, typing back, "Absolutely. Thursday work?" 67 missed calls. That's how long it took them to realize I wasn't dragging them down. I was holding them up. They gave Blake credit for my work, then panicked when I left and clients discovered the truth. Rick fired me to make room for his son's ego. Now his son was gone. Rick was broken, and their company was circling the drain. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was exhausting, and I had better things to do with my energy. I was building something now, something that was mine. Web Industries had tripled their client base in 14 months, largely because of the relationships I'd brought with me. Marcus had already started talking about making me partner. The best revenge wasn't destruction. It was indifference. It was succeeding so completely that their approval became irrelevant. It was winning so thoroughly that their regret felt like background noise. Dad was proud of me now. 14 months too late, but he was proud. I deleted his number from my phone and drove home to the life I'd built without them.